Hello and welcome. Today, I'm going to whisper to you about an ancient civilization that once dominated the lands of Anatolia, the Hittites. They were a powerful empire, known for their formidable armies, advanced legal systems, and diplomatic prowess. So, get comfortable, relax, and let's dive into the fascinating history of the Hittite Empire together. The Hittite Empire was founded around 1600 BCE in the central region of Anatolia, in what is now modern-day Turkey. This period marked the transition from the early Bronze Age to the late Bronze Age, a time of significant political and cultural shifts across the ancient Near East. The Hittites, initially a collection of small city-states and kingdoms, gradually united under a central authority. The consolidation of power began under King Labarna I, often considered the first great ruler of the Hittite Empire. Labarna I established the foundations of what would become a powerful and influential empire, setting the stage for future expansion and the creation of a centralized state. The world at the time of the Hittite foundation. When the Hittites began to rise in power, the world was a complex tapestry of emerging and declining civilizations, each vying for control over fertile lands, trade routes, and valuable resources. 1. Mesopotamia. To the southeast of the Hittites lay Mesopotamia, home to some of the oldest civilizations in human history. During this period, Mesopotamia was dominated by the Babylonian Empire under the rule of Hammurabi, who is famous for his code of laws. Babylon was a major center of culture, commerce, and political power, influencing much of the region's affairs. However, by the time the Hittites were consolidating power, Babylon was facing internal strife and external pressures from neighboring peoples. 2. Egypt. To the southwest, Egypt was in the midst of the Middle Kingdom period, which was a time of stability, prosperity, and extensive building projects. The pharaohs of this era were powerful rulers who controlled a vast and wealthy kingdom with influence reaching into the Levant. However, as the Hittites were rising, Egypt was entering the Second Intermediate Period, a time of political fragmentation and vulnerability, which would later be resolved in the New Kingdom era. 3. The Levant. The Levant, a region that includes modern-day Syria, Lebanon, Israel, and Jordan, was a patchwork of small city-states and kingdoms, often caught between the larger powers of Mesopotamia and Egypt. These city-states were important centers of trade, linking the great civilizations of the Near East. The Hittites would later seek to exert influence over this region, recognizing its strategic importance. 4. The Aegean and Mycenaean Greece. To the west of the Hittites, across the Aegean Sea, the early Mycenaean civilization was beginning to take shape. This culture, centered on mainland Greece, would later become known for its fortified palaces and powerful warrior kings. Though not yet a major player on the world stage during the early Hittite period, the Mycenaeans would eventually interact with the Hittites through trade and conflict. 5. Anatolia. In Anatolia itself, where the Hittites were based, the region was a mosaic of small, independent city-states and kingdoms, each with its own local rulers. The Hittites, originally one of these smaller entities, gradually expanded their influence either through conquest or diplomacy to bring these disparate regions under their control. This unification was a key factor in the emergence of the Hittite state as a major power. The Hittite consolidation of power. The process of unification and state building in the Hittite lands was complex and marked by both internal and external challenges. The early Hittite kings, including Labarna I and his successor, Hattusili I, focused on establishing a strong central authority. They moved the capital to Hattusa, strategically located in the heart of Anatolia, and built fortifications that symbolized their growing power. Adesili, in particular, is remembered for his military campaigns, which extended Hittite influence beyond their initial heartland. These campaigns were not only aimed at subjugating neighboring states, but also at securing vital trade routes and resources, such as metal ores, which were essential for the production of weapons and tools. During this early period, the Hittites also began to develop their distinctive cultural and legal practices. They adopted and adapted elements from the surrounding civilizations, particularly the Mesopotamians, while also contributing their own innovations. The Hittite legal code, for example, was one of the most advanced of its time, incorporating principles of justice that were progressive compared to their contemporaries. The political landscape in which the Hittites emerged was one of shifting alliances, frequent conflicts, and constant power struggles. Yet, through a combination of military strength, strategic diplomacy, and internal consolidation, the Hittites succeeded in laying the foundations for what would become one of the great empires of the ancient world. As we explore the lives of the ancient Hittites, it's fascinating to think about how their everyday routines were shaped by the world around them. These people lived in a society where farming was the backbone of life. Most Hittites were farmers, tending to fields of wheat, barley, and legumes. They also raised livestock like cattle, sheep, and goats, which provided them not only with food but also with wool and leather for clothing. Life was centered around small villages, though some lived in larger towns and cities like Hattusa, the capital. Their homes were simple but sturdy, made from mud brick with wooden beams for support. Inside, the hearth was the heart of the household, where families gathered for warmth and meals. Life was communal, with extended families living together, sharing the burdens and joys of daily life. When it came to what they wore, the Hittites favored garments made from wool. Men usually wore tunics, while women dressed in long, flowing robes. Jewelry was also common, with both men and women adorning themselves in pieces made from bronze, gold, and silver. The wealthier Hittites had access to finer materials and imported goods, which added a bit of luxury to their lives. Religion was a cornerstone of Hittite life, influencing almost every aspect of their society. The Hittites believed in a multitude of gods and goddesses, each with their own domain. The storm god of Hittite, for example, was one of the most revered, associated with thunder, rain, and fertility, essential forces in an agrarian society. The sun goddess of Arena was another central figure, embodying the life-giving power of the sun and serving as a symbol of justice. The Hittites worshipped these deities in temples that were more than just places of prayer. They were community centers where people gathered for rituals, festivals, and important social events. Sacrifices, particularly of animals like sheep and cattle, were a regular part of religious life, meant to appease the gods and secure their favor. Festivals were lively events that not only honored the gods but also brought people together, reinforcing the bonds of their shared beliefs. The king of the Hittites played a dual role as both a political leader and a religious figure. He was seen as the intermediary between the gods and the people, leading major religious ceremonies and ensuring that the gods were properly worshipped. This connection between the divine and the monarchy helped legitimize the king's rule, making his authority seem both ordained and unchallengeable. Death and the afterlife were also important aspects of Hittite belief. They imagined the afterlife as an underworld where the dead would go to reside, and they practiced elaborate burial rituals to ensure that the deceased were well prepared for this journey. Graves were often filled with goods, like weapons, tools, and jewelry that the dead might need in the afterlife. For the elite, tombs were constructed with great care, reflecting their status and the belief in their continued importance even after death. The Hittites were also pioneers in law and governance. They developed a sophisticated legal system that was quite advanced for its time. Their laws focused on fairness, often emphasizing compensation rather than punishment. For example, if someone committed theft, they might be required to return what they stole along with a fine rather than facing corporal punishment. This approach to justice reflected a society that valued restitution and social harmony. Writing played a crucial role in Hittite society. They adopted cuneiform from the Sumerians and also developed their own hieroglyphic script for use in monumental inscriptions. Writing was essential for keeping records, administering the state, and communicating across the vast distances of their empire. The work of scribes was highly valued, and they were responsible for preserving the laws, treaties, and religious texts that have given us so much insight into Hittite culture. So, as we look at the Hittites, we see a people deeply connected to their land, their gods, and each other. Their lives were shaped by the rhythms of the seasons, the demands of their faith, and the challenges of living in a world where power and survival were often inextricably linked. The Hittite Empire's story begins around 1600 BCE in the rugged highlands of central Anatolia in what is today modern Turkey. This was a region dominated by small, independent city-states and kingdoms, each vying for power and influence. Among these early city-states was Hattusa, which would soon become the heart of the burgeoning Hittite state. The founding of the empire. The foundation of the Hittite Empire is traditionally attributed to King Labarna I, who is often considered the first significant ruler of the Hittites. Labarna's reign marked the beginning of the unification of the Hittite people under a central authority. Before Labarna, the region was fragmented, with local chieftains and kings ruling over their respective territories. Labarna, through a combination of military conquest and strategic alliances, managed to bring these disparate regions together, laying the groundwork for what would become a powerful empire. Under Labarna's rule, the capital was established at Hattusa, a strategically located city that would become synonymous with Hittite power. Hattusa's location in the heart of Anatolia provided natural defenses and control over key trade routes, making it an ideal center for the growing state. The city was fortified with massive walls, which served both as a defense against external threats and as a symbol of the emerging power of the Hittite kings. Hattusili and the expansion of the Hittite kingdom. Following Labarna I, his successor, Hattusili I, possibly his son or chosen heir, took the throne around 1586 BCE and began a series of military campaigns that would significantly expand the Hittite territory. Hattusili I was an ambitious ruler, and under his leadership, the Hittites transformed from a regional power into a formidable kingdom. One of Hattusili's primary objectives was to secure control over the vital trade routes that crisscrossed Anatolia and connected the Hittites to the wealth of Mesopotamia and the Levant. These routes were essential for the flow of goods, such as metals, textiles, and other valuable commodities, which were crucial for the economic prosperity of the Hittite state. Hattusili led campaigns to the south and southeast, targeting important cities like Alalak and Aleppo in Syria. These conquests were not just about territorial expansion, but also about controlling the economic lifeblood of the region. By bringing these cities under Hittite control, Hattusili ensured that the wealth of trade would flow into his kingdom, bolstering its economy and providing the resources needed for further expansion. Hattusili's reign was also marked by internal consolidation. He worked to strengthen the central authority of the king over the Hittite lands, bringing local leaders under his direct control. This was a delicate balance, as the Hittite kings relied on the loyalty of local nobles and military leaders to maintain their power. Hattusili's efforts to centralize authority set the stage for the future stability and growth of the empire. However, Hattusili's reign was not without challenges. Towards the end of his rule, he faced internal dissent and rebellion, particularly from within his own family. The exact nature of these conflicts is unclear, but they likely involve disputes over succession and the distribution of power. Despite these challenges, Hattusili managed to maintain control until his death, after which his chosen successor, Mursalai took the throne. Mursalai and the apex of early Hittite power. Mursalai, who came to power around 1556 BCE, inherited a kingdom that was already a dominant force in Anatolia and parts of Syria. Mursalai, like his predecessor, was a warrior king, and he embarked on a campaign that would bring the Hittite Empire to the height of its early power. Mursalai's most famous and ambitious campaign was his attack on Babylon, one of the most powerful cities of the time. Around 1531 BCE, Mursalai led his armies across great distances to strike at Babylon, dealing a crushing blow to the city and ending the Amorite dynasty that had ruled there. This victory was significant not just for its military success, but also for its demonstration of Hittite power far beyond their traditional borders. The sack of Babylon was a testament to the reach and strength of the Hittite military. However, the conquest of Babylon did not lead to permanent Hittite control over Mesopotamia. Instead, Mursalai's forces looted the city and returned to Hattusa, laden with spoils. This campaign demonstrated the Hittites' ability to project power across vast distances, but it also revealed the limits of their control. The region was too far from the Hittite heartland to maintain permanent dominance, and the Hittites left the governance of Mesopotamia to other local powers. Mursalai's reign, while marked by these impressive military achievements, ended in turmoil. Upon his return to Hattusa, he faced internal strife, much like his predecessor. The Hittite royal court was rife with intrigue, and Mursalai was eventually assassinated, possibly as a result of a conspiracy within his own family or among the nobles. The challenges of succession and internal strife. Following Mursalai's assassination, the Hittite Empire entered a period of instability. The sudden and violent death of the king created a power vacuum, leading to a series of short and tumultuous reigns. This period, often referred to as the Hittite Old Kingdom, was marked by internal power struggles as various factions within the royal family and the nobility vied for control. The assassination of Mursalai likely stemmed from tensions within the royal family over succession rights and the distribution of power among the nobility. The Hittite system of governance required a strong and capable ruler to hold the kingdom together, and the absence of such leadership led to fragmentation and a weakening of central authority. During this time, several rulers came to the throne, each facing challenges to their legitimacy and authority. This period of instability weakened the Hittite state, making it vulnerable to external threats and internal rebellion. The once strong centralized control established by the early kings began to erode as local leaders and rival claimants to the throne asserted their independence. The recovery and re-establishment of stability. Despite these challenges, the Hittite Empire did not collapse. By the end of the first 100 years, around 1500 BCE, the Hittites began to recover from this period of instability. A series of competent rulers, starting with Telopinu, managed to restore order and reassert central authority. Telopinu, who came to power around 1500 BCE, is particularly notable for his efforts to stabilize the empire. He implemented legal reforms, including the famous Edict of Telopinu, which aimed to regulate the succession process and prevent the kind of internal conflicts that had plagued the empire after Mursalai's death. This edict was an important step in establishing a more orderly and predictable system of governance, ensuring that future transitions of power would be less fraught with danger. Under Telopinu and his successors, the Hittite Empire began to regain its strength, setting the stage for what would become its greatest period of expansion and influence in the centuries to come. After the tumultuous first century of the Hittite Empire, marked by the reigns of early kings like Labarnai and Hattusili, the empire entered a period of recovery and consolidation. The years between 1500 BCE and 1400 BCE were crucial for stabilizing the Hittite state, solidifying its power, and setting the stage for future greatness. Recovery under Telopinu. The reign of Telopinu, around 1500 BCE, is often seen as a turning point in Hittite history. Following the assassination of Mursalai and the ensuing chaos, Telopinu worked tirelessly to restore order to the kingdom. His most notable achievement was the Edict of Telopinu, which sought to address the recurring issue of succession disputes that had plagued the Hittites since their early days. The Edict of Telopinu laid out clear rules for royal succession, attempting to curb the power struggles and internal conflicts that had weakened the empire. By establishing a more orderly process for choosing the next king, Telopinu helped to stabilize the Hittite state, ensuring that future transitions of power would be less disruptive. This legal reform was crucial in maintaining the continuity of the royal line and strengthening central authority. Telopinu also focused on consolidating the empire's territories. While his reign was not marked by significant military campaigns, he did manage to maintain control over the regions conquered by his predecessors, ensuring that the Hittites remained a formidable power in Anatolia. His diplomatic efforts helped to secure the borders of the empire and fostered peaceful relations with neighboring states, allowing the Hittites to focus on internal development. The rise of the Middle Kingdom. Following Telopinu, the Hittite Empire entered a period known as the Middle Kingdom, which lasted from roughly 1500 BCE to 1430 BCE. This era was characterized by continued consolidation and gradual expansion as the Hittite kings worked to rebuild the state's strength and extend its influence. The kings of the Middle Kingdom focused on strengthening the administrative structure of the empire. They continued to build on Telopinu's reforms, ensuring that the central government remained strong and that the regions under Hittite control were well managed. This period saw the further development of the Hittite bureaucracy, with a growing class of scribes and officials responsible for the day-to-day governance of the empire. Diplomacy played a key role during this time. The Hittite kings sought to establish and maintain alliances with neighboring states, particularly in western Anatolia and northern Syria. These alliances were often cemented through marriage, trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts. The Hittites were pragmatic in their approach to foreign relations, recognizing that stability at home often depended on maintaining peace and cooperation with their neighbors. Militarily, the Hittites were cautious during the Middle Kingdom. They focused on securing their borders and protecting their interests rather than engaging in large-scale conquests. However, they did not hesitate to use force when necessary to defend their territory or assert their dominance. The Hittite military remained a powerful force, with well-trained charioteers and infantry capable of defending the empire against external threats. Expansion and the emergence of new powers. As the Middle Kingdom progressed, the Hittites began to look outward once more. By the mid-15th century BCE, the Hittite kings were increasingly interested in expanding their influence into new regions, particularly in the Levant and northern Syria. This period saw the emergence of the Mitanni Empire, a powerful state that controlled much of northern Mesopotamia and posed a significant challenge to Hittite ambitions. The Hittites and the Mitanni competed for control of key trade routes and strategic territories, particularly in the region of Kisawatna and the city-states of northern Syria. The Hittites sought to bring these areas under their influence, recognizing their economic and military importance. This rivalry with the Mitanni would become a central feature of Hittite foreign policy in the coming decades. Despite this competition, the Hittites were careful not to overextend themselves. They pursued a policy of cautious expansion, securing their gains through diplomacy and strategic marriages rather than outright conquest. This approach allowed them to build a network of allies and vassals, extending Hittite influence without the need for constant military campaigns. Cultural and religious developments. During this period, the Hittite Empire also saw significant cultural and religious developments. The Hittite kings continued to serve as both political and religious leaders, playing a central role in the worship of the state's pantheon of gods. The Hittite religion was highly syncretic, incorporating deities and rituals from the various cultures that the Hittites came into contact with. The religious festivals and ceremonies conducted by the Hittite kings were crucial for maintaining the unity and stability of the empire. These events reinforced the divine right of the king to rule and provided an opportunity for the people to reaffirm their loyalty to the state. The Hittite kings also oversaw the construction of temples and religious monuments, which served as both places of worship and symbols of Hittite power. The arts and literature of the Hittite Empire flourished during this time. The Hittites were skilled metalworkers, producing intricate objects in gold, silver, and bronze. Their artisans also excelled in pottery, weaving, and carving, creating both functional items and decorative pieces that reflected the wealth and sophistication of Hittite society. Writing and record-keeping were essential aspects of Hittite culture. The Hittites used cuneiform writing, which they had adapted from the Mesopotamians, to record laws, treaties, religious texts, and historical events. This practice allowed the Hittites to maintain a detailed record of their history and ensured that their achievements would be remembered by future generations. The consolidation of power and the road to the empire's golden age. By the end of the 15th century BCE, around 1400 BCE, the Hittite Empire had emerged from its earlier periods of instability and was well on its way to becoming one of the most powerful states in the ancient Near East. The reforms of Telepinu and the careful diplomacy of his successors had brought stability and order to the empire, while the cautious expansion of Hittite influence had extended their reach into new territories. The Hittites were now poised for a period of significant growth and development, both internally and externally. The foundations laid during this century of recovery and consolidation would allow the Hittite Empire to enter its golden age, a time when it would reach the height of its power and influence, dominating the politics of the ancient Near East and leaving a lasting legacy on the history of the region. As the 14th century BCE began, the Hittites were ready to embark on a new chapter in their history, one that would see them rise to the status of a great empire, rivaling the other major powers of the time, including Egypt, the Mitanni, and later the Assyrians. The next 100 years of the Hittite Empire, spanning roughly from 1400 BCE to 1300 BCE, marked the pinnacle of Hittite power and influence in the ancient Near East. This period is often referred to as the Hittite Golden Age, during which the empire reached its greatest territorial extent, established itself as a major player in international politics, and left a lasting legacy in both history and culture. The rise of the Hittite New Kingdom. As the 14th century BCE began, the Hittite Empire was poised for significant expansion under a series of strong and capable rulers. This period, known as the Hittite New Kingdom or the Hittite Empire period, saw the Hittites rise to the status of a great empire, rivaling other major powers such as Egypt, the Mitanni, and later, the Assyrians. One of the key figures in this transformation was King Suppiluliuma I, who reigned from approximately 1350 to 1322 BCE. Suppiluliuma I is often credited with transforming the Hittite state into a true empire. He was a brilliant military strategist and a shrewd diplomat, whose reign marked the beginning of the Hittites' dominance over much of Anatolia and the Levant. Suppiluliuma I and the conquest of Mitanni. One of Suppiluliuma I's most significant achievements was his campaign against the Mitanni Empire. The Mitanni had long been a rival of the Hittites, controlling much of northern Syria and posing a threat to Hittite ambitions in the region. Suppiluliuma's campaigns against the Mitanni were both decisive and brutal. He managed to defeat the Mitanni king Tushratta and effectively dismantle the Mitanni Empire, bringing much of its territory under Hittite control. The conquest of Mitanni not only expanded Hittite territory but also secured key trade routes and resources that were vital to the empire's economy. It also positioned the Hittites as a dominant power in the region, capable of challenging even the mighty Egyptians. Following his victories, Suppiluliuma established a network of vassal states in northern Syria and the Levant. These vassal states were ruled by local kings who swore allegiance to the Hittite king and provided tribute and military support when required. This system of vassalage allowed the Hittites to control a vast and diverse territory without the need for direct administration, which would have stretched their resources too thin. Relations with Egypt and the Amarna letters. During this period, the Hittites also engaged in complex diplomacy with Egypt, the other major power in the region. The correspondence between the Hittite kings and the Egyptian pharaohs, preserved in the Amarna letters, provides a fascinating glimpse into the diplomatic relations of the time. One of the most famous incidents from this period is the so-called Zenanza affair. After the death of the Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten, his widow, Queen Enkhsenamen, sent a letter to Suppiluliuma I, asking him to send one of his sons to marry her and become the new pharaoh of Egypt. This request was highly unusual, as it was rare for an Egyptian queen to seek a foreign prince as her husband. Suppiluliuma, intrigued by the prospect of a Hittite prince ascending the Egyptian throne, sent his son Zenanza to Egypt. However, Zenanza never arrived. He was killed en route, likely by Egyptian officials who opposed the marriage. This incident strained relations between the Hittites and Egypt, leading to renewed hostilities. Mursalite II and the expansion of the empire. Suppiluliuma I's son, Mursalite II, who reigned from approximately 1321 to 1295 BCE, inherited a powerful and expansive empire. Mursalite II proved to be an effective ruler, continuing his father's policies of expansion and consolidation. Mursalite's reign was marked by a series of military campaigns aimed at securing and expanding the empire's borders. He successfully subdued rebellious vassals in northern Syria and Anatolia, ensuring that the Hittite Empire remained cohesive and under central control. He also launched campaigns against the Kaska, a fierce people who lived in the mountainous regions of northern Anatolia and frequently raided Hittite territory. Mursalai II was not only a warrior king but also a devoutly religious ruler. He conducted numerous religious rituals and sought the favor of the gods to ensure the success of his reign. His reign saw the continued development of Hittite religious practices, with the king playing a central role in the worship of the state's pantheon of gods. Adesili III and the Battle of Kadesh. One of the most significant events of the late 14th century BCE was the Battle of Kadesh, fought between the Hittites and the Egyptians around 1274 BCE. This battle, one of the largest chariot battles in history, took place during the reign of Adesili III, who came to power after a period of internal conflict and a brief usurpation. Adesili III was a skilled diplomat and military leader. He came to the throne after deposing his nephew, Uri-Teshub, who had previously ruled as Mursalai III. Adesili's rise to power marked a return to stability after a period of internal strife, and he quickly turned his attention to external threats, particularly Egypt. The Battle of Kadesh was a pivotal moment in Hittite-Egyptian relations. Although the battle was tactically inconclusive, with neither side achieving a decisive victory, it demonstrated the power and resilience of the Hittite military. The battle was followed by a long period of negotiations, culminating in the signing of the Treaty of Kadesh around 1259 BCE, one of the earliest known peace treaties in history. The treaty, signed by Adesili III and the Egyptian pharaoh Ramesses II, established a lasting peace between the two great powers and formalized their borders. It also led to a period of diplomatic cooperation, with exchanges of envoys, gifts, and even royal marriages to cement the alliance. This treaty is one of the most important documents from the ancient world, reflecting the sophisticated diplomacy practiced by both the Hittites and Egyptians. Cultural and religious achievements. The Hittite Golden Age was not just a time of military and political success, it was also a period of cultural and religious flourishing. The Hittites continued to develop their unique blend of Indo-European and Anatolian cultural traditions, creating a rich and diverse society. Hittite religion continued to evolve, incorporating gods and rituals from the various cultures they encountered. The Hittite pantheon was vast and included deities from the Hurrians, the Luwians, and other neighboring peoples. Religious festivals, conducted by the king and priesthood, were central to Hittite society, reinforcing the connection between the divine and the monarchy. The arts also flourished during this period. Hittite craftsmen produced exquisite works in metal, stone, and pottery. The monumental architecture of the Hittite capital, Hattusa, reached its zenith with the construction of massive fortifications, palaces, and temples. The Lion Gate and the Sphinx Gate of Hattusa, with their impressive carvings, are iconic symbols of Hittite architectural achievement. Writing and record-keeping were highly developed, with extensive archives of cuneiform tablets found at Hattusa. These tablets include royal decrees, treaties, religious texts, and historical records, providing invaluable insights into Hittite society, governance, and international relations. The challenges of the late 13th century BCE. As the 13th century BCE progressed, the Hittite Empire began to face new challenges. The stability and prosperity of the Golden Age were increasingly threatened by external pressures and internal difficulties. One of the most significant challenges was the rise of the Assyrian Empire, which began to assert itself as a major power in northern Mesopotamia. The Assyrians posed a growing threat to Hittite control over the regions of northern Syria and the upper Euphrates. The Hittites, while still powerful, found themselves in a position where they had to balance the demands of defending their empire against both the Assyrians and the Egyptians, as well as managing their extensive network of vassal states. Internally, the Hittite Empire faced problems related to succession, economic strain, and the pressures of maintaining control over a vast and diverse territory. The cost of constant military campaigns, combined with the need to manage a complex bureaucracy, began to take a toll on the empire's resources. The road to decline. By the end of the 13th century BCE, the signs of decline were becoming more apparent. The Hittite kings continued to struggle with the challenges of governing an empire that stretched from the Aegean coast to the borders of Mesopotamia. The once powerful Hittite state was beginning to show signs of fragmentation as local rulers and vassals became increasingly autonomous. The late 13th century BC also saw the beginning of what would later be known as the Bronze Age collapse, a period of widespread upheaval and the fall of several major civilizations in the eastern Mediterranean and Near East. The Hittites, like many of their contemporaries, were affected by this crisis, which included a combination of natural disasters, invasions, and economic decline. The next 100 years of the Hittite Empire, spanning approximately from 1300 BCE to 1200 BCE, marked the final chapter in the history of this powerful civilization. During this period, the Hittite Empire faced increasing internal and external challenges that ultimately led to its decline and eventual collapse. Despite these challenges, the Hittites continued to exert significant influence in the ancient Near East until the very end. The continued reign of Hattusili III and Tidhalia IV. As the 13th century BCE continued, the Hittite Empire was still under the capable leadership of Hattusili III, who had secured a lasting peace with Egypt through the Treaty of Kadesh. This treaty marked a high point in Hittite diplomacy, establishing a stable relationship with one of the empire's most powerful neighbors. Hattusili III's reign was followed by that of his son, Tidhalia IV, who ruled from approximately 1237 to 1209 BCE. Tidhalia IV inherited an empire that was still strong but increasingly under pressure from both internal and external factors. Tidhalia IV is remembered for his efforts to maintain Hittite power and influence, particularly in the face of growing threats from the Assyrians and the Aegean world. Tidhalia IV's reign and the growing threats. Tidhalia IV faced significant challenges during his reign, particularly from the rising power of Assyria. The Assyrian Empire, under rulers like Shalmaneser I and Tukulti-Ninurta I, was becoming a formidable force in the region, and the Hittites found themselves in a difficult position as they sought to defend their territories in northern Syria and the upper Euphrates. To counter the Assyrian threat, Tidhalia IV engaged in a series of military campaigns aimed at securing Hittite control over key regions. These campaigns were costly and stretched the resources of the empire. Although Tidhalia IV managed to hold off the Assyrians for a time, the Hittite Empire was increasingly on the defensive. Another significant challenge during Tidhalia IV's reign came from the west, where the so-called Sea Peoples began to make their presence felt. These mysterious groups, possibly originating from the Aegean and Anatolian regions, were responsible for a series of devastating raids and invasions across the eastern Mediterranean. The Hittites, like other major powers of the time, struggled to deal with these incursions, which disrupted trade routes and destabilized the regions under their control. The decline of the Hittite Empire. As the pressures on the Hittite Empire mounted, the internal stability of the state began to deteriorate. The cost of constant military campaigns, combined with the need to maintain a vast and diverse empire, placed a heavy burden on the Hittite economy. The empire's extensive bureaucracy, once a source of strength, became increasingly cumbersome and difficult to manage. Succession disputes also contributed to the weakening of the Hittite state. The death of Tudhaliya IV was followed by a period of political instability as rival factions within the royal family and the nobility vied for control of the throne. This infighting further eroded the central authority of the king and weakened the empire's ability to respond to external threats. By the late 13th century BCE, the Hittite Empire was showing signs of fragmentation. The vassal states that had once been loyal to the Hittite king began to assert their independence, and the central government's control over the outlying regions of the empire weakened. The once mighty Hittite state was now struggling to maintain its cohesion and integrity. The fall of Hattusa and the end of the empire. The final blow to the Hittite Empire came around 1200 BCE, when the capital city of Hattusa was sacked and destroyed. The exact circumstances of the fall of Hattusa remain unclear, but it is likely that a combination of internal rebellion, external invasion, and economic collapse contributed to the city's demise. The destruction of Hattusa marked the end of the Hittite Empire as a unified political entity. With the fall of the capital, the central authority of the Hittite king collapsed, and the empire disintegrated into smaller, independent states. Some of these successor states, such as Carchemish and other Neo-Hittite kingdoms in northern Syria, continued to exist for several centuries, but they were never able to regain the power and influence of the old Hittite Empire. The fall of the Hittite Empire was part of a broader pattern of collapse that affected many civilizations in the Eastern Mediterranean and Near East during the Late Bronze Age. This period, known as the Bronze Age collapse, saw the fall of several major powers, including the Mycenaean civilization in Greece and the Egyptian New Kingdom, due to a combination of factors such as invasions, natural disasters, and economic decline. Legacy of the Hittite Empire. Despite its collapse, the legacy of the Hittite Empire lived on. The Hittites left a lasting impact on the cultures and civilizations that followed them. Their legal codes, diplomatic practices, and military innovations influenced the development of later states in the region. The Hittites were also responsible for significant cultural and religious contributions. Their pantheon of gods, which included deities from various cultures they encountered, influenced the religious practices of later civilizations in the Near East. The Hittite syncretic approach to religion, incorporating and adapting the gods and rituals of other cultures, helped to create a rich and diverse spiritual tradition. The discovery of the ruins of Hattusa in the 19th century and the subsequent decipherment of the Hittite language have provided modern scholars with a wealth of information about this ancient civilization. The Hittites are now recognized as one of the great powers of the ancient world, whose achievements in law, diplomacy, and culture have left an indelible mark on history. The Hittite Empire, which flourished in Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, during the second millennium BCE, was shaped by a series of influential leaders who played critical roles in its rise, expansion, and eventual decline. These leaders were not only warriors but also diplomats, administrators, and religious figures who left a lasting legacy in the ancient Near East. Here's an overview of some of the most significant Hittite rulers and their contributions. Labarna I. Labarna I is traditionally regarded as the founder of the Hittite Old Kingdom, ruling around 1680 to 1650 BCE. He is credited with unifying various Hittite tribes and establishing a centralized kingdom with its capital at Hattusa. Labarna's reign marked the beginning of Hittite expansion as he led campaigns into neighboring regions to secure control over trade routes and resources. His efforts laid the foundation for the Hittite state, and his name became synonymous with kingship. Later rulers would adopt Labarna as a royal title. Hattusili I, who reigned from around 1650 to 1620 BCE, was one of the most important early Hittite kings. He expanded the Hittite territory significantly, pushing into northern Syria and securing vital trade routes. Hattusili is known for his military prowess and for establishing Hattusa as the permanent capital of the Hittite kingdom. His campaigns extended Hittite influence far beyond Anatolia, making the Hittites a significant power in the region. Hattusili also dealt with internal strife, including challenges to his authority from within his own family, which he managed to suppress. Mursili I, the grandson of Hattusili I, ruled from approximately 1620 to 1590 BCE and is best known for his military conquests. He continued the expansionist policies of his grandfather, leading a famous campaign against Babylon around 1595 BCE. Mursili's sack of Babylon ended the Amorite dynasty and marked the peak of Hittite power during the Old Kingdom period. However, his reign ended abruptly when he was assassinated upon returning to Hattusa, leading to a period of instability in the Hittite kingdom. Telipinu, who reigned around 1525 to 1500 BCE, is notable for his efforts to stabilize the Hittite state after a period of internal turmoil following the assassination of Mursili I. Telipinu issued the Edict of Telipinu, a legal document aimed at regulating royal succession to prevent further disputes and bloodshed. His reforms helped to restore order and strengthen central authority, laying the groundwork for the stability and growth of the Hittite kingdom. Telipinu's reign marked the transition from the Old Kingdom to the Middle Kingdom. Suppiluliuma I, who ruled from around 1350 to 1322 BCE, is often considered the greatest of all Hittite kings. His reign marked the beginning of the Hittite New Kingdom, also known as the Hittite Empire period. Suppiluliuma was a brilliant military strategist and diplomat. He successfully waged war against the Mitanni Empire, effectively dismantling it and expanding Hittite control over northern Syria. His diplomatic skills were equally impressive. He established a network of vassal states and secured alliances that greatly enhanced Hittite influence. Suppiluliuma's reign marked the zenith of Hittite power as he transformed the Hittites into one of the dominant powers of the ancient Near East. Mursili II, the son of Suppiluliuma I, ruled from approximately 1321 to 1295 BCE. He inherited a powerful empire but faced significant challenges, including a plague that struck Hittite and a series of rebellions among vassal states. Despite these difficulties, Mursili II proved to be a capable and determined ruler. He conducted numerous military campaigns to reassert Hittite control over rebellious territories, particularly in Syria and Anatolia. Mursili II is also known for his piety. He conducted extensive religious rituals to seek the favor of the gods, which were recorded in detail on cuneiform tablets. His reign solidified the gains made by his father and maintained the Hittite Empire's dominance. Hattusili III, who reigned from around 1267 to 1237 BCE, is another key figure in Hittite history. He came to power after a period of internal conflict, deposing his nephew Uriteshub Mursili III in a coup. Hattusili III's reign was marked by significant diplomatic achievements, particularly his relationship with Egypt. He is best known for signing the Treaty of Kadesh with Pharaoh Ramesses II around 1259 BCE, one of the earliest known peace treaties in history. This treaty ended hostilities between the Hittites and Egypt and established a long-lasting alliance between the two great powers. Hattusili III's reign is also noted for his efforts to stabilize the empire internally and maintain its territorial integrity. Tidhalia IV. Tidhalia IV, the son of Hattusili III, ruled from approximately 1237 to 1209 BCE. His reign was marked by continued efforts to defend the Hittite Empire against external threats, particularly from the Assyrians and the Sea Peoples. Tidhalia IV faced significant challenges, including rebellions within the empire and pressure from neighboring states. Despite these difficulties, he managed to maintain Hittite control over much of their territory, although the empire was increasingly on the defensive. Tidhalia IV is also known for his religious devotion and for building temples and monuments, including the famous reliefs at Uzalakiah, near Hattusa. Suppiluliuma II. Suppiluliuma II, who reigned from around 1207 to 1178 BCE, was the last known king of the Hittite Empire. His reign was a period of great turmoil, as the Hittite Empire faced the full force of the Bronze Age collapse. Suppiluliuma II tried to defend the empire against the encroaching threats from the Sea Peoples and internal unrest, but the empire was already in decline. The destruction of Hattusa, the Hittite capital, marked the end of the Hittite Empire as a major power. After the fall of Hattusa, the Hittite territories fragmented into small Neo-Hittite states, which continued to exist for several centuries but never regained the power and influence of the original Hittite Empire. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the fascinating history of the Hittite Empire and its remarkable leaders. From the founding of their kingdom to their rise as a dominant power in the ancient Near East, the Hittites left a lasting legacy that continues to captivate historians and history enthusiasts alike. If you enjoyed this exploration of the Hittites and want to learn more about other ancient civilizations and their leaders, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more captivating stories from history to life. I look forward to sharing more incredible tales with you in the next video. Until then, stay curious and keep exploring the past.